Hi, welcome to my channel, and welcome to this series that we are calling What is Awakening? This is the second part of this series. And so if you haven't listened to the first part, I recommend that you do that, but it isn't necessary. If you want to pick up right here, I've designed the rest of these sessions to really be standalone if you'd like. And what I really want to start to do is dive into the central aspects of this process that I'm calling awakening, what it is at its heart, and what it means for you if you should choose to go down this path. So let's get to it. Today I've titled this session Awakening is Surrender. And the reason I've titled it that is because the heart of awakening is really around surrender to what is. Surrender to what is in every moment. And, a lot of the suffering that we deal with on a day to day basis is thought based. And when our thoughts start to cause us suffering, that is usually what prompts people to search for something better, a better way, a better approach. And that's what I'm trying to do here is give us a better way uh, to approach the idea of thoughts, to change our relationship with thoughts, and to recognize what is actually causing our suffering. And a lot of times, the approach is to try to eliminate thought. And that has not been my own experience. And because eliminating thought seems impossible. And it seems impossible to me. It seems impossible to a lot of people. And so, my experience has been that you don't need to eliminate the thoughts. And the reason is because the thoughts themselves are not actually the things that are doing the suffering. It's actually the resistance to the thoughts that is causing the suffering. Um, and so, what we're going to try to do is to learn to surrender to everything as it appears. And that's how we eliminate suffering. And I think the best way to do this to start off is to kind of give some examples. And so some of these examples are going to be potentially triggering. And so, if you're particularly emotionally sensitive to certain topics, such as depression, suicide, death and disease of friends and loved ones, just warning you now, that's kind of where I think these examples will go because they kind of really get at the heart of what this surrender looks like. And so I'll give a personal example first. Um, Several years ago, I had a friend who was very depressed, and I didn't even really know it. You suspect that someone is struggling with things, but life gets in the way, and you're separated by space and time, and so you check in every once in a while, but you don't really know what's going on with their day to day. And this friend ended up taking their own life. And, that's that was really hard for me. Um, and the reason that it's hard, right? The reason that we feel so much suffering in that is not that it happened. It's not even in the idea that it happened, right? So the first thing that happened to me was the thought popped into my head that my friend is dead, that my friend killed himself, right? And that's actually not suffering, right? That's just a thought, right? Labeling it as just a thought. My friend committed suicide. My friend killed themselves. The next thing that happens, at least happened for me, is that I felt the experience of grief, sadness. And that's also not suffering, right? That's just a pure emotion. And that's perfectly okay and perfectly understandable. So where does the suffering start to happen? It starts to happen in the next thought, because we start to resist the thought and the feeling that we just had, right? So the thought popped into my head, my friend killed themselves. And the resistance is, I wish it wasn't that way. I wish my friend was still here, right? And that is the suffering, right? Because the thought is just there, and the resistance that we wish it was different, that's where the suffering starts to occur. So, where do all of these extra thoughts that lead to suffering come from? What triggers them? Well, in most cases, it is because of a feeling or emotion that we are resisting. And so, if we go back to the beginning where I talked about the thought that my friend killed themselves, the next thing I said happened was that I had a feeling of sadness, loss, and grief. And what we've been conditioned to do is to experience that feeling or that emotion as uncomfortable, something that we want to get rid of or fix or push away. And it is this resistance that usually triggers the rest of the thoughts. And that resistance is what's causing the cascade of thoughts that lead to suffering. And, I'm slowing this down significantly, right? But in real time, it happens very, very quickly. And so it can be difficult to recognize that that's what is occurring. But that is primarily how the brain starts to cascade these thoughts that bounce off of each other. So I'm going to give another example. So perhaps you are sitting there and the thought pops into your head, I think I have cancer. Maybe you had a strange sensation in the body. Maybe you have not been feeling that well, and you don't know why. Maybe you looked up your symptoms on your phone, which I don't recommend, and it was very clear from the internet that you have cancer. Whatever the case may be. Maybe this is just something that you've always been worried about. Maybe there's family history of cancer. Whatever the reason may be, the thought pops into your head, I think I might have cancer. And typically, if a thought like this comes into your head, the next thing that happens is an emotion of fear or anxiety or unease. And then the cascade of thoughts come, right? And it might be something like, I think I have cancer. I don't want this. What if I really do have cancer? What am I going to do? What's going to happen to my family? How are we going to afford this? I think I might have cancer. Is it going to hurt? What about chemo? What about radiation? I think I might have cancer. And so you can see again that these thoughts, these extra thoughts, are the thing that is causing the suffering, not the initial thought that leads to an emotion. So let's do one more. Suppose a thought pops into your head that is particularly violent or destructive in some way. It might be something like, I fucking hate that person. I want them to die. I'm going to kill them. Or I want to cheat on my spouse or significant other. Or I want to steal that thing. Or I want to do drugs. I've done drugs in the past. I want to do them again. Whatever the destructive thought might be. And so these kinds of thoughts are often accompanied by an emotion that is usually associated with guilt or shame in some way. And again, this is an emotion that we tend to try to push away, right? We've been conditioned to not feel that emotion fully, that we need to find some way to escape it, to push it down, to distract ourselves. And so what that does is that leads to a whole cascade of thoughts that again lead to suffering. So it might go something like this. Oh, I fucking hate that guy. I want to kill him. This is how I'm going to kill him. And then the emotion comes. And then the resistance and the thoughts. Why am I feeling like that? What is wrong with me? I should not be thinking like this. I'm a terrible person. Who thinks like this? No one else thinks like this. I must be a piece of shit. What the hell is the matter with me? Why can't I get myself under control? I'm a piece of shit. Right? And so this is, again, this resistance to the emotion that comes up leads to this cascade of thoughts that lead to suffering. And, I think this is a process that I've experienced many, many times. And I think it's completely normal. And really what we just want to start to do is to recognize it and figure out, how do we actually dive into the feelings and the emotions that we're experiencing without resistance, without triggering these cascade of extra thoughts. And so that's what I hope to do in the next session. I think that the approach here will be to talk about, how do we inhabit that emotion fully and allow it to be? How do we surrender to what is in that moment so that we can move through that emotion and avoid the suffering that comes from all the extra thought? So thank you for listening. I look forward to the next time that we meet, and I hope that this has been helpful.